In this episode, we speak with Ben Levin, co-founder and CEO of NextLevel Equity, a lower middle market private investment firm focused on providing capital to rapidly growing software and technology-enabled businesses. Founded in 2009, NextLevel Equity has raised over $4.5 billion across closed funds and co-investments, completed more than 125 investments, and operates out of New York City and Greenwich, Connecticut. Ben shares how Level's distinctive NextLevel Operations platform, a three-tiered operational model of internal operators, senior special operators, and curated external experts, drives tangible value for portfolio companies across go-to-market, product, and M&A initiatives. This approach ensures highly tailored support, enabling high-growth SaaS companies to scale efficiently and sustainably. Drawing on his experience investing in high-growth software companies since 1997, Ben discusses the firm's disciplined approach to AI adoption, strategic engagement with portfolio companies, and focus on building a sustainable, high-performance culture that develops top-tier talent while preserving operational excellence. NextLevel Equity and Ben Levin have received numerous accolades, most recently with Ben named a top software investor of 2025 by GrowthCap and NextLevel Equity recognized as a top private equity firm of 2025, underscoring their enduring impact on the software growth investing landscape. I'm your host, RJ Lumba. We hope you enjoy the show. If you like the episode, click to follow.
RJ Lumba is the managing partner of GrowthCap and the executive chairman of Market Insight Media. He is the host of Growth Investor, a podcast featuring today's best investors, executives, and founders. In the minutes ahead, we'll uncover insights and strategies for accelerating growth and succeeding in business.
Ben, good to see you again. Thanks for taking the time.
My pleasure. Nice to see you again, RJ. And as I said, flattered to be back always.
Well, that first episode was awesome. I had listened back through it a couple times, and I think your candor and kind of the variety of topics we covered was awesome. And so it was well received. Good to have you back. This episode will focus on the competitive advantages of Level. And by the way, I just recorded a podcast yesterday with another firm founder, and they gave a shout out to Level as an example of a firm that they actually would like to emulate.
Oh, wow.
You'll have to listen to that episode. It'll be released in a couple of weeks.
That is insanely flattering, and I'll look for that. And I don't know that I ever get used to that, but it's nice to hear. So thank you for that.
Let's kick off with some of the unique aspects to Level Equity, maybe the strategic or operational capabilities that your firm brings to bear on its portfolio companies.
Yeah, happy to. So as it relates to operational capabilities or value add, I think there's a huge number of different ways in which sponsors generally engage with companies. And we've tried, most of the partners at Level have come from big firms, and we've sold to big firms, and we've interacted with bigger and smaller firms. And, the candid answer is for probably years 0 through 5 or 0 through 7, we didn't really have the income statement to build much of an operational capability. And so we thought a lot about what would really work for our target businesses. And so we're investing in rapid growth, smaller, kind of $5 to $30 million SaaS software companies. And so we thought a lot about what would resonate in a mutual affinity model. And we centered on really kind of a 3-tiered approach where we have a group called NextLevel Operations. Those are internal. And those are all operators. That's run by an ex-CEO. He was a CEO for us, but a serial software CEO. And then we've tried to map that internal group to all the functional areas within a software business. So sales, marketing, customer success, finance, technology, operations. And so we have a combination of operating partners and operating experts who have functional expertise working in that category of business. So they've all spent the vast majority of their careers working for smaller, rapid growth, often sponsor-backed, private equity or venture capital-backed software businesses. The thesis being the people on our side that are kind of tasked with helping the portfolio have actually been on the other side, done those jobs, understand the jobs that they're doing. And then around that, we surround them with 2 tiers of folks that are third parties. One we'll call special operators. They're generally folks that have been in the Level ecosystem. They tend to be a little bit more senior, really capable, big focus on, not shockingly, go-to-market and product or go-to-market and technology. And then outside of that, we have a dozen or a couple of dozen firms that have functional expertise for doing a pricing and packaging study, third parties, but third parties that we know, we curate, we vet. And so the goal broadly is, if you think about what software companies do, they solve a problem. So they have a product, they market that product, and then they need to run a business, an income statement that hopefully ends with a lot of growth and a lot of profitability to make money for the constituents. And that's kind of how the group's set up. There's a bunch of technology and product resources. Obviously, in the last couple of years and in the next couple, AI will be a big component of product. But so there's product, then there's go-to-market. It's the biggest group inside NLO. There's a bunch of folks that have expertise on sales, marketing, retention, customer success. And then there's what I'd call financial strategy and M&A. So the CEO, the head of NLO, Ray Carey, would be an example of that, ran companies. We have ex-CFOs, folks that did M&A integration. So the strategic overlay. And that's how the group's been set up and grown over the last 5 or 7 years.
In those three areas, will they be brought to every portfolio company so that you're trying to hit on all those levers? Because I imagine there's different circumstances, right? Each company may be strong in one area and maybe needs help in others.
Yeah. So initially, yes, we do both minority and control investments. And the NextLevel Operations team is involved in getting to know those businesses. So a lot of times when you're getting to know a potential investment, they want to understand what your capabilities are. And so they'll meet that team and they'll help us evidence what we could do, how we could be a good partner. Then during due diligence, they'll lead a lot of the functional work streams. And then 75% of their time is working with the portfolio post-close. But it's not 100% of businesses over time. Initially, we'll do scorecards and we'll close a transaction. We'll say, hey, here's our observations. The vast majority of the time, they'll take those observations. And for the first year, we'll be very engaged in helping them think through building a plan to get to the next outcome. And then, as you mentioned, though, over time, there's businesses that have very specific needs, hopefully more positive than negative, but both. There are businesses that are doing a large acquisition or growing exceptionally quickly and need help in managing that scale. And then there's obviously businesses that will hit a challenging period. And so we tend to rank or stack rank where the needs are, but that's overlaid with mutual affinity, meaning the companies want the help, we want to give it, we don't have a playbooks approach. So pretty bespoke. And you can see episodic interaction too. You can be very involved in the first year, business is doing amazingly. And then in year 3 or year 3.5, they do a big transformational piece of M&A and we get more significantly involved, and or they run into headwinds and we get involved to try and address those challenges.
Mm-hmm. Maybe what we could do is like shed some light on a specific example. Like maybe there was like a portfolio company that you invested in and you saw that it had a distinct need in a certain area and you were able to kind of fill that need and have a very successful outcome.
I'll give 2 examples. I won't name companies. It's like children. I'm not going to say I love or like working with one, but I'll give one really tactical, a business in the compliance space that we invested in when it was $10 million in revenues or $10 million in ARR, and it's close to 50. And along the way, sales always performed exceptionally well. They were growing like a weed, but as they scaled that sales and marketing organization, as they added bodies, they started to have like a slightly lower conversion rate. And so we helped them diagnose that. And the part of the go-to-market funnel that was challenging was show rates, like the number of people that were showing up for scheduled demos had declined meaningfully and was off industry benchmark. So we got super involved in diagnosing that, diagnosing some of the work around that. We did help them add to that team, and then that dramatically recovered and their show rates moved back to and above industry standards. So like a really tactical example. Much more abstract example I would give that has been done several times is we will buy and then add a significant piece of M&A, often in a vertical market. We've done this 2 times in the last 6 months in vertical EMRs. We've done this in the grocery space where we make an investment and either simultaneous or within a year, there's a transformational piece of M&A. So that would be a good example of where all 3 layers of our value add capabilities are utilized. NLO will be very involved. We'll be helping them sometimes identify, close, plan for the integration. We will very likely, in significant like scale M&A, be bringing in third parties who are helping assess cost and revenue synergies, and then set up a post-close paradigm to make sure that the things that we've collectively identified with the company happen and happen over a time frame. Those would be the areas where, if you look backwards and you look at some of our most successful investments, our large investment businesses that we've sold or sold partially to larger sponsors, a lot of times you see a bunch of those things recur. There's some tactical stuff. There's a go-to-market break against the backdrop of growth. There's a big piece of M&A or several pieces of M&A, and the integration work pre-close, during integration, post tend to be where we engage a lot. And then, as I said, there's lots of really positive periods where you really don't need to engage a lot. And we don't have a paradigm for that in a good way, which is we don't have a perspective that we always need to be engaged in every aspect of a company, independent of whether we control it or whether we're a small minority.
And how do you incorporate AI into your portfolio companies? Or better yet, how are you strategizing around the influence AI is going to have on your portfolio companies?
So obviously massive current topic, huge spectrum of ways in which AI can affect a business. At its core, AI is a technology. And so most people leap immediately to how does AI impact technology stacks? So broadly, I think we'd agree with many folks that you'd talk to that system of records that have significant data moats are more likely to be beneficiaries of AI, where AI can decrease the cost of development, can really meaningfully increase the velocity with which people develop. We're seeing companies move from traditional development methodologies to Empire or AI pods, where you have a subject matter expert and a developer and a UI expert churning out new products shockingly quickly, through to when assessing new businesses, is there risk of AI disenfranchising that category or that specific company? There's been a huge amount of talk about that. There's been a lot of multiple impact for businesses that have the potential for AI to disrupt. We haven't seen a huge amount of actual tactical disruption yet. We don't have businesses in the portfolio or things that we've looked at where growth rates have meaningfully clicked down because AI competitors are kind of eating their lunch, but it's a big topic. So we, across every area specific to technology, are thinking about it. And then there's the efficiency that a customer success group or a go-to-market group can get by using agentic AI. We're doing a lot of that internally. Specifically, how we're doing that, we have an AI operating partner. Two of our special operators are tech leads. They're CTOs of current or former level portfolio companies. And we've got a number of AI consultants. The analogy I would use is AI implementation at companies is a bit like a stem cell injection. Like, it's very helpful to get some talent or evidence of a methodology into a company. And once observed, the virality of that example is incredibly high. So we're trying to get folks exposed to it. We're trying to build some workflows and some tools with and for folks, if and as needed, so they can start to see the benefits. And then we, like everybody else, are voracious consumers of data, and we're looking at what the public markets, how they're responding to AI product introductions, how income statements in the public markets look or don't look as they're affected by AI. But I think there's probably, even today, which is dramatically different than a year ago, no one's not focused on it. And I think everybody has some version of a perspective that if you're not kind of AI first over a period of time, 6 months, 18 months, 24 months, 36 months, you're going to have a real challenge. We still haven't seen massive overall reductions in R&D spend lines and customer success spend lines. I say customer success is probably where we're seeing it the most, where people are adding less bodies or they're decreasing bodies because agentic is so effective at kind of first line of defense for customer stuff.
And then in terms of your investing activity, are you increasingly looking to AI first companies, or are you?
I've done a huge amount of ground up AI native built in the last 18 months, growing dramatically. And that's not a knock on those businesses. There are some amazing businesses and we've engaged with a lot of those. The one challenge with that category of business is a lack of retention and renewal history. Like, a lot of those businesses are growing incredibly rapidly or exponentially. There are some really nice AI first vertical market software businesses, but we have not made what I would characterize yet as an AI native investment that has been built in the last year and has been built ground up, because generally we are really focused on like gross and net retention and some concept of renewal history.
How would you characterize the competitive set of firms operating at your end of the market? When we think about growth equity at large, there's folks that are continuing to operate, we'll call it lower middle market growth. There's folks in, clearly middle market, then there's the large tech
Yep.
investors. And then there's folks moving up. It
Yep.
seems like there were people staying put. How would you describe the competitive dynamics happening in your end of the market?
Yeah, I'll maybe stay away from names,
Yeah.
but broadly, like when I started doing this 20 years ago, there were 6 growth equity firms and 2 nascent growth buyout firms, and it was a $25 billion market. And maybe it's a 2 trillion or $1 to $2 trillion market today, where I think Preqin data says there's 565 or 535 non-venture software focused private equity firms. And you nailed it. It's like there's the large folks, the folks that raise 10 or $15 billion at a clip and manage 50 to $100 billion. And some of those are buyout only, and some of those are growth and buyout. Some of those do encompass the kind of original growth equity names. And we really never directly, I mean, very occasionally we'll directly compete, but very rarely. We're maybe with a portfolio company that's trying to buy something that we're trying to buy. There's firms that raise $4 to $6 billion, and there's now half a dozen of those. And again, rarely competing directly with them. There's firms that were right where we were 5 or 10 years ago, and now they're raising $3 billion, $3.5 billion. Again, more likely a buyer of our assets or a partner than a competitor. And then there's broadly a couple of dozen, but tactically really like a half a dozen to a dozen firms that we compete directly against. They have very similar models. They have similar fund sizes. They have different versions of all the things I'm talking about, but they're exceptional at what they do. And we actually have great relationships with those firms and like them, but we also like to win. And so we want to win deals and win capital. So we compete directly with them. And there's little permutation. Some of those firms have moved to only doing control. We still do minority and control. Some of those firms will exclusively focus on businesses that are sub $10 million of ARR or north of $15 million of ARR. And we still span the gamut from kind of 15 to 35. There's some of those firms that have like an exceptional end market focus in an area where we don't, and we might lose to that firm in an area where we haven't done a lot of deals. And then there's areas where in governance, risk, and compliance or in system of record, we've done a lot of things. So it is a ever more competitive market with very talented folks, lots of whom have come out of big firms, but it's much narrower than the broader, there's a $2 trillion of capital chasing software businesses. I think for a business in our sweet spot, they'll have tons of opportunity to take capital across the spectrum, from multi-stage venture firms to venture to debt to growth equity to growth buyout to strategic capital. They tend to very rapidly narrow it down to a smaller number of firms that, if they're desirous of this type of transaction, that can fulfill those needs. Again, we don't see any of those firms 10 times a year, but we'll see those firms 2 or 3 times a year, whereas the vast majority of the rest of a competitive set we'll see once every 5 years.
You have a great video up on your website of you speaking and talking about the firm. And you do mention like building a place where people love to come to work and love to work with each other. You've got team members who've been with you for a long time. Tell us about your intention around culture and what you're looking to build there at Level.
So I'm humbled and blessed by, I love this thing. I stumbled into private equity when I was a 25-year-old, and it changed my life. It gave me this virtuous cycle of a thing that hopefully I was reasonably good at. And I had an opportunity to do it in a couple of different formats, including this unbelievably humbling and exciting one, which is one that I was part of starting. And we've now got a partnership of 8. All of the partners at this firm have come from other amazing firms. So they've been trained at some of the best firms in the world and decided that they really like this slice of the world. So I want to do exactly what we set out to do 15 years ago, which is find rapid growth, capital efficient bootstrap software businesses, back entrepreneurs that we like, be surrounded by people that I like and are inspirational and aspirational to me. I got a crazy smart team and super excited at the concept of this firm far outliving me. So we're trying to build a firm that's sustainable and can move through generations, which is all of the things I mentioned, and I'm saying very quickly, but are super hard to do and do well, and necessitate like constant creativity and reinvention and assessment and the ability to be self-critical and look at what's working and what's not and make adjustments. But the backdrop is everybody here loves this thing that we do. And the culture is not a thing that kind of takes care of itself. You have to constantly think about what's working, what isn't working. And again, I'm biased, but I think over the last 50 years, it's just gotten better. Like we have folks now that started here as analysts that are partners, which is super cool, like a really cool journey. And you need to be a little bit older as a firm to be able to afford that journey, but that's exciting. You mentioned in the competitive question, like firms kind of come into and leave the market. We feel like we have a real differentiated history here and that we've been doing it in this market for a really long time. We want to stay in this market doing it for a really long time. And that means we can grow, but we need to grow at a rate that allows us to grow our team and do it with a velocity that allows for culture to maintain and to be able to give people what they also need, which is a path to build careers and build families. We have a Bring Your Kids to Work Day. There was, I think, 24, 25 kids this year. So people's ability to do those things necessitate growth. So you can't be static, but you kind of need to manage between growing too fast. I think some firms can grow very quickly, grow out of their market, and that can have an impact on culture, but you need to grow fast enough that everybody can build the lives and the careers that excite them.
Yeah, we have a decent portion of our audience that's folks just like graduating college or folks in investment banking that want to get into growth equity, private equity. Do you take folks right out of undergrad?
Yeah, we still hire a large chunk of the analysts directly out of undergrad. We do both. We hire laterally, we hire out of undergrad, we hire out of banking and consulting practices, but we still do. We now, for 9 or 10 years, have had a summer program. That's a great feeder program because it's 10 weeks of the job. You're doing the calling job for 10 weeks. And that's been a great development. But yes, we still do hire a bunch directly out of undergrad.
And what do you look for? This could be at any level. What do you look for in a great candidate?
I mean, candidly, everybody we interview is smarter than me. They're all very accomplished. So you almost don't have to solve for any of that. They're very accomplished and talented and technically capable. I look for people that are passionate, that are interesting, that are creative, that have a good room feel. Like everybody knows very quickly into a meeting with anybody if they like being in that room or it's uncomfortable or awkward. And on the spectrum of kind of people that you have in your life, whether it's work or personal or family, there's people that every time you sit with them, you walk away energized and you want to be better and do better. And there's people that, forgive the way I phrase it, but will suck the marrow out of you like they're negative, and you don't get that. And so I'm focused on that, specifically depending on the job. Sometimes it's super helpful to have done something similar if you're hiring at the mid-level or the more senior level. For analysts and associates, a lot of times it's a combination of really understanding what this specific job is and why they think that's exciting, and then evidencing that charisma, creativity, dynamic personality that can be really helpful in the junior level job in this category of business, where again, we're sourcing deals, where they're on the phones with CEOs that are much more senior to them. So those are the types of things. The baseline is they're all ridiculously talented and have gone to great schools.
Last topic, fitness, because you are big into fitness. We haven't yet put you to the test with one of our events. Hopefully we'll get you out to Jackson Hole or another venue. But tell us about what you're doing today to keep fit.
So I saw that hike online, and because I'm competitive, my brain went immediately to would I even be able to do it? And if I did, where would I finish? But I've never claimed that I'm like the most cardiovascular fit. I do jujitsu. I have on and off for a reasonably long time. I'm 53, so I've got a bunch more joint related pain than I did as a younger person. So I still lift and run and do cardio and do a variety of things. But generally, I'm personally a little lighter. I lift a little lighter. I take things a little bit easier, but I still am totally obsessed with it as a format. It's very helpful. I think fitness, going for a walk, we talked about this last time I was on, like managing yourself. For me, managing myself, managing my ability to show up in a good mental state, energized, passionate, excited, manage my own stress and anxiety. Fitness is now one of a number of things I do, but it's the cornerstone. And I feel different days I don't work out. Sometimes I'll work out in the evening instead of the morning. And it's usually not a great call. I'm more likely to not get it done if I wait until the evening versus the morning. But I also just feel different during the day if I get a workout in. And I find that it is the most powerful mental health stimulation that I've come across. So still a big fan.
Any other recent insights about just maintaining or improving physical, mental, spiritual health. I find that it's a topic people really like to discuss and learn more about. But any recent key thing maybe you added to your repertoire?
Probably the most poignant over a decade, sleep. I was one of those silly people that kind of prided myself on, quote, not needing a lot of sleep in my 20s and 30s, which was totally untrue. I'm not genetically advantaged. I was just dumb and headstrong. So I prioritize sleep. It's one of the reasons, actually, I mentioned I don't always get to the gym in the morning because I will sleep now instead of forcing myself to get out of the bed. I've been a meditator for years. I read a ton on both wellness and health. And in my 40s and 50s, a lot of my early fitness goals were decidedly vanity and aesthetic and wanting to feel good about myself and how I looked. And I've incorporated a lot more around what's actually good for my body. I think it's very easy on a fitness journey to perform incredibly and look fabulous and be very unhealthy. And so I focus more on, I read Peter Attia's book, Outlive. I've done a lot of that testing. Like I've taken a much more concerted effort to focus on the health aspect of health and wellness as opposed to just the performance aspect. But I do find all of that accrues to that ability to show up mentally. I manage my caffeine. Like I do things that allow me to show up in a tighter band and a little more predictably to be able to be on when you need to be on, because you need to be on. And if you had a big night or you drink too much caffeine or you didn't get enough sleep or you're not managing your stress and anxiety, you're more resilient as a young person, but it still affects performance in a pretty meaningful way. And so I prioritize that more and more as I get older.
Have you eliminated alcohol?
I have. And you know, I didn't, in my own mind, have a huge problem with alcohol, but a couple of people that I know stopped drinking 2 years ago. And I'd always taken a month or 2 or 3 months off a year, mostly just because I'm a control freak and I wanted to make sure that I was okay and didn't have any issues. But yeah, I haven't drank in almost 2 years. And there's definitely like, I'll talk about the positives. There are lots of positives. I sleep better and I probably get less anxious and feel better. But there are some negatives. Like there's some wonderful things that alcohol enables as it relates to relationships and good times that I do miss. And I didn't stop drinking with a perspective that I'm done for life. So I continue to go back and forth. Coincidentally, my wife stopped at the same time. So we both sit down often and say, are we done? Are we ever going to have like a cocktail? I don't know the answer, but so far it's working well. So I'm sticking with it.
Yeah, I had lunch yesterday with a good friend of mine. We ended up having a couple of glasses of wine, but you know, I feel it the next day. You know, I'm not 100%. Maybe I'm like 98% today.
So that is the thing that impacted my decision the most. Like I used to feel like it was quasi-symmetric, where if I had 2 or 3 hours of maybe excess fun, I'd have 2 or 3 hours of excess challenge. And then as I got older, it just became really imbalanced. Like I'd have 2 or 3 hours of fun and then I'd pay for it for a day. God forbid I had 6 or 8 hours of a lot of fun. I could pay for that for a couple of days. And I just noticed that mentally I was more anxious and I was honestly less smart the next day. And so it was the thing, it becoming really unbalanced to the negative made it a lot easier to just not go back to.
Yeah, I like talking to you about the fitness aspect. I'm turning 50 in February, so you know everything comes more into focus on performance and how to try to stay young and do well at the various things we need to do well at in life.
You're blessed with a fine head of hair, so you look decidedly less than 50. So that will pay dividends for a long time.
Well, Ben, always a pleasure. Thanks again.
Oh my God, so much fun. Thanks for having me, RJ. It's always good to see you. And let me know if there's anything else we can do to help ever.